Hi everyone, welcome back to the API series. In today's video, we are going to see how we can automate post call in Cypress. So we are going to cover all these cases. So we have positive cases as well as negative cases. As part of the positive cases, we are going to cover how we can make a post call by passing the JSON body. Then we will see if we create a body as an object, separate object, and pass it in our request, how it is going to work in Cypress. Fine. We will also see how we can store our body in a separate JSON file and store it inside the fixtures folder, and how we can import it. You can also store your JSON inside the fixture folder and then use it in your test class. The last one is importing JSON, which is basically if you do not want to store your JSON inside the fixture folder and you want to create a separate package for it. So how we can import that JSON and make an API call, we will see that scenario as well. Then we will see negative cases in which we will test for wrong headers. We will check for duplicate data, and in case of missing, what response you get. Okay, so we will automate all these cases, and in the end, we will also automate the chaining, which is basically first you will create a source over here, and then we will verify if it is getting created or not. Okay, so we have the sample API, which is this one. It's gorest.co.in and v2 uses. This is a free API. You can easily use it, but for that you have to pass the header over here. Okay, I explained in my previous video how we can get the header, how we can get the bearer token. You just have to go to this website gorest.co.in, and over there you have to log in to get the bearer token. So make sure your value is correct. The bearer token, the B should be in capital letter, and it should be camel case. And if your bearer token is not correct, it is not going to work. So for creating a user, you have to pass this header. Okay, bearer token, you have to pass this as a header. For this is our post call and this is our URL. Next thing is we are passing a body over here in which I am passing my name, email, gender, and status. So we are passing 4 fields over here, and based on this, we are creating a user. So once you create a user, in the body, you will see an ID is getting created. Okay, so this is our ID, which is every time it is uniquely getting created for every resource. And then the rest of the values should be same as what we are passing in our request. Fine, name, email, gender, and status. And there is one more thing, which is status code. So for post calls, the status code is 201 normally, because it says your resource is created, which is 201. Okay, so this is what we are going to automate through Cypress today. So let's go to our editor and let's start writing the code. So I've already created a file which is post users.cy.js, and this is my basic template. Okay. Next thing, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a it block over here. So inside the it block, what we will write? We will write our test case name, which is post using JSON body. Fine. And then over here, we will create a callback function. Like I explained in my previous video, in order to make an API call in Cypress, you have to use this method, which is cy.request. So I'll be using cy.request, and inside that, over here, as we are making a post call, so for the pass method as post. In my previous video where I explained about get call, the method was get, but over here, as this is a post call, we have to pass the method as post. Okay. Next one is our URL. So what is our URL? We will copy the URL from this postman. So this is your endpoint. Okay. After the endpoint, the next thing is our headers. So you have to pass like this, headers, and this is an object. Fine. What is the header value? Just go to postman and copy from here. So we have the key name is authorization and the value is this. So I will just copy the value and will write over here. This is my authorization, and then this is the value. Okay. So till now, it is same what we saw in the previous video. For get also, it was just get and then URL and headers. What is additional over here? Additional over here is we are passing body as well. So for making a post call, you have to pass body also, right? So the body which we are going to use is this one. Just copy from here and just paste it inside the body. Fine. So now our JSON is also ready. So what we did, we created cy.request method. We are passing the method as post. We are passing the URL. We are passing the headers, and then we are passing the body also. Okay. Now this is done. The next thing is, once you make a call, what you have to do? You have to do some assertion also, right? So for that, what we will do? We will use dot then, and we will store this object. So I'll just name it as response. You can pass any name over here. Okay. So this is just for the reference. We are storing this response inside this. And now what we will do? We will use assertion. We will, first of all, we will verify In response, our status code is 201. So this is my first scenario in which I'm verifying the status code is correct. Next thing is I will verify our properties are correct or not. By properties, I mean I will verify the name is correct, gender is correct, status is correct. Is the same as what we are passing in the request or not? Okay, for that, what I will do, expect response dot body, because we are verifying body over here. That's why I will pass response dot body, and then I will use the method which is has dot property. So it will check in your JSON object if it has that property or not. And over here, what I will pass what property I want to verify. Let's say I want to verify this name. So I will just copy this and pass it over here like this. So it is just going to verify if your response contains this property and the value is this one or not. Fine. Similar thing we will verify for other fields as well. Next one is we are going to verify gender. Copy from here. So let us just copy from here and pass it inside. Okay. The last one, I will verify status. Okay. And I will just paste over here like this. Okay. Apart from this, we are going to do one more thing. So what we are going to do, we are getting ID also over here, right? So I will verify ID because we don't know the value of ID. So it's getting generated randomly every time. So in this case, we will just verify if our body contains ID and it is not null. We just have to verify ID should not be null. Okay, for that, what I'm going to use? So for this, I will use 2 dot not to be null. So what we are doing, we are verifying the status code. We are verifying the body has this property or not. Then we are verifying all the different properties over here. And in that, we are also verifying the ID is not null. Okay, so this is a basic assertion we are performing inside this. Apart from this, what I will do, I will just change the email because this is a unique email. So I will just pass the value like this. Fine. Now let's run the test case and let's see if it is working or not. So let me go back to the editor. So this is my post users.cy.js. Let's run the test case and let's see. So you see, this is getting passed now. What we are doing, we are actually asserting the status code, which is 201, which is fine. Then we are asserting different properties, which is first one is name, gender, and status. Okay, and in that we are verifying our ID is not null. So we are getting this value, which is this one. So this is ID value, which is basically not null. So this is verifying everything. Okay, but there is an issue over here. What is the issue? So if I rerun my test case, you will see it will be failed. It's failing because the email ID, whatever we have passed, that is a unique value. But we have hard-coded the email in our case, right? So this is our hard-coded email. So every time if you run the test case, it will be failed. So either you have to change it manually, which is not a suggested approach because you can't change it every time, right? Or what you can do, you can create a function over here to generate the random email every time. Fine. So for that, what we will do, I'm just going to create a function over here. So I'll just name it as generate random email. So inside this, first of all, I will write like this. So first of all, we will generate a random string. How we can do that? So in JavaScript, we use this method which is math.random. Okay, so this math.random will basically return as an integer value. Convert it to a string. What I will do, I will just use toString and I will pass the value as 36 because it will be returning as an alphanumeric value. How many characters we want? We want, let's say I want 8 characters. For that, I will pass 2 and 10. What this code is performing over here, it is returning as an alphanumeric value of 8 characters. Fine. The next thing is we have created a random string. Now the next thing is we have to pass the domain also. Okay. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to form my new email. So this is my email. And then over here, so I got this random string. Fine. So this is my random string plus we are going to pass some domain also. So whatever domain you want to pass, you can pass over here. I'm just passing this test domain, which is at this postable.com. Okay. So now we have got our email. Now I will just return this email so that you can use it further in your code. This is the function which is returning us a random email every time. Now what I will do, I will just copy this function name and will go inside my it block. Over here, I will write let email address. So I will write like this. You can pass any name. So email address and then generate email. So what it is going to store? It is going to store the value of email, whatever will be generated as part of the function. Fine. So whatever value this function will return, it will be stored in this variable, which is email address. So now I'll just copy the email address from here, and instead of passing the hard-coded value, you can pass this email address. Okay. So with this email address, every time you don't have to worry, manually updating the email ID. It will be done automatically. So now let's run the test case and let's see this scenario as well. Fine. So now you see, this is actually getting passed now. So if I rerun my test case, again, it is getting passed. Okay. So what I can do, I can also print over here. So we can know what is the email ID. So let's print over here using cy.log. You can print in Cypress. So cy.log, let's say email. You can pass any message. I'm just passing email over here. And then what is our value? So this is my email address. Okay. Now let's see. Let's run the test case. You see, now this is our email address, and if I rerun the test case, it will be changed. You see, every time it is generating a random email. So whenever you're working in a framework, whenever you're working in a team, you have to think about such scenarios. You have to avoid your manual work. So for that, you have to create such functions also where you can get this random email, or in your project, if there is something else is expected, you have to create such functions instead of hard coding the values, which is not a suggested approach, which is not a good coding practice. You need to create functions separately. Fine. So this was our first test, in which what we did, we passed the JSON body inside our cy.request. Now the next case is what I'm going to do. The next case, I'm going to pass this body outside my cy.request. What does that mean? That means we are not passing our JSON inside this. For this, I will just create over here. I'll just create like this, let payload. Okay, create any variable. And inside this, I will pass the object, this body object. Fine. It's nothing else. I'm just moving the position of body, this data. I'm just moving it outside my cy.req. And I will pass payload over here directly. Fine. So don't get confused. What I'm doing, the body which we were passing. So in our post call, this was our body, right? So this body we're passing inside the cy.request earlier. Now we have just changed the position of payload, which is outside my cy.request. Fine. So now if I use payload instead of, passing the object, this is also going to work. So now let's run the test case and let's see. If I rerun my test case, and over here we can see this is getting passed. That means in this case also, it is not throwing an error. It is actually fetching the value of payload, whatever we defined outside the cy.request. Fine. So these are our two cases. The next scenario is if we want to create this object. So this object, I'm not going to pass over. I don't want to pass inside my it block also in the same test case, because there can be scenarios, maybe you, for example, you will have maybe 10 APIs, right? For all the 10 APIs, if you are maintaining the payload over here, because this is just a small payload. But if you have a huge payload, then it is not a good practice to add all the payloads in a single file. It will create a lot of confusion also, and your file will also, expand, keep on expanding. So that is also not a good approach. So what you can do, the next thing is you can create a fixture file over here. So go to this package, which is fixtures on the left side, and create a file over here. So I'm going to create users.json. Fine. And over here, I'm going to pass the payload, which is this one. The same payload I'm going to pass now inside my fixture file. This is my fixture file. That's it. Fine. If you go to this file, the next thing is I will just create a new test block over here. I will just copy this it block. This is my second scenario. Fine. And over here, I will just pass like this, post call fix. Got it? Now I will remove the payload from here because we are going to use fixtures, right? cy.fixture, and then inside it, what is the name of your JSON file? So the name of JSON file over here is users.json. So I'm just going to use users. It will automatically fetch the name, and then afterwards I'm going to store the response of this fixture. So for that, I'm just passing a response. So this response object, you can pass anything over here, right? So this will basically, so inside this, I will copy cy.request. So which is until here. Fine. So I will explain you once more so you don't get confused. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to access the fixture file, which is users.json, and from there I'm going to pass my payload object. So instead of passing payload over here, I will use this response object. Fine. And there's one more catch over here. Like we know our email address, this one is unique. So I will, because we've hard coded inside this, inside our post call, what I will do, I will just access my response object dot email. Okay. And then I will assign it the value, which is this generate email. Okay. This is very easy and I will remove this. So what I'm doing, I'm just fetching my users.json, which is this one, which has all the parameters inside it. And then as we know, our email ID is unique. So I'm going to change it with the generate using this generate random email function. Now this response object, we are going to pass in our body. So our body will always have an updated email address. And now if we execute this API, we should see a post call for this scenario as well. Okay, now let's run the test case and let's see. So I will just open my test runner again, click on this post users. Now you see we have two test scenarios over here. First one is the JSON, which we saw earlier, how it is going to work. Okay. Next one is fixtures. So over here we have A/B test one, all the fields which we are fetching from the fixture folder, right? So everything is same. We can see over here we have name as this, email, gender, everything. Whatever we passed in the fixture file, we are passing over here as an assertion, and then we are verifying ID also. Okay. So this is done. Next scenario is, if you do not want to create a fixture folder, if you do not want to create a file inside the fixture folder, and if you want to create a separate package, because in that case, what you can do, you can just import the file instead of using cy.fixture, because this is not located inside the fixture, right? So this is not going to work directly with cy.fixture because it will only consider the files which are inside the fixtures folder. If it is outside, for that, what we are going to do, we are going to create a new package over here, new package inside my Cypress. I will just name it as config. And inside config, I will create a new file and I will name it as payload.json. Okay. And the value I'm going to copy from users.json because we are going to use the same value, same data over here also. Same data over here also. Okay. So now go to your post users. What I will do in order to access this file, I will just write over here import. I will name it as payload. And from which location you have to pass like this, from and then the location path. So what is the path? So this is under config folder. So config and then payload.json. Fine. So in this case, I am not going to use cy.fixture. I will directly use payload in our code. Fine. So let me create a new it block for this. So let me just copy this one and we will create a new it block. Let me just create it. Okay. So this is not fixture. This is config JSON. Fine. And over here, I will remove my cy.fixtures because we don't need it now. We are going to make a direct call. And then the brackets also, I will just remove it. Okay. So now we have got a cy.request. But the other thing, what over here, we are just going to change the body. I will pass over here payload. So where is this payload coming from? This is our payload, which is coming from this file, which is inside payload.json, which is inside the config package. So you got the difference. Earlier, our file was inside the fixtures. That's why we were using cy.fixture. But now we have created a separate package inside which we have added our JSON. So in order to access that, I'm using this import, and then you have to pass the path. So now this is also done. And we have third scenario. This is our third scenario in which we are passing the config JSON. So over here also, what we will do, again, we will just change the value of email address. So payload.email. And what is the value? Our value is this function, which is generate random email. Okay. Now just pass over here and let's run the test case and let's see. So let's run it. Now you see, we have three test files. First one is where we are passing the JSON as an object outside cy.request. Then we are fetching the file from fixtures folder where we verified all the different properties, name, gender, status, and ID. And third one is with our config JSON, which is basically a JSON file, your user data, not in fixtures folders, it is in some other package. Fine. So we saw all the different positive scenarios. Next thing is, for a positive scenario, what we can do. This is not completed yet, right? After assertion also, this is not completed yet. What is the best practice? What we should do after creating a post call? We should make sure that resource is created or not. In order to do that, we created a resource like this. Okay, we just verified as of now our status code and our response is getting created. Next thing is we are going to do one more level of assertion. We are going to verify making a call for users API with this ID, and we are going to check if it got created or not. So what is this? First, let's understand manually over here. So for example, I have this get users API and I'm passing the path parameter, which is my ID value. And if I'm hitting it, so I'm getting this value, which is 200. Okay. And we have some response also. Okay. So this is your end-to-end scenario. So whenever you will make an API call, what you have to do? First of all, you are creating a resource and then you are verifying also that the resource got created or not. So for that, we will use cy.request, but the method name over here will be get in this case. So after my basic assertions, I will write inside this, I will write cy.request. I will pass method as get. Fine. Next one is our URL. So what is the URL? URL value I will copy from the Postman. So this is our get call. This is our URL in which I am passing the path param, which is this one. But this path param, this ID will be randomly generated every time, right? Whenever we are making a call to this user's API post call, it is generating an ID which is again different, dynamic every time. So we can't hard code the ID over here. For that, what I will do, outside my cy.request, I will create a value. I will create a variable which is ID, and over here I will store the value of ID. So how we are going to store? Because we are getting in the response body, so it will be like response.body and then .id. Now with the users, I'm going to pass this as well, which is ID. Fine. Now a new URL will be found, which will be until users, and then this ID would be appended to our endpoint. Fine. And apart from this, we are going to pass headers also. So this is my same header. I can copy from here, right? Fine. So this is, and next thing is we are going to pass header also. So for headers, what I will do, I will just copy from here directly because this is the same header we are going to use, right? Now we have our get call with the URL, with the headers, everything is done. But after this call, I will do an additional step. I will store my response. So we will store our response like this. And inside the callback function, what I'm going to do, I'm going to verify if our response dot status equal. So this is our get call. So in this case, I'm expecting it to be 200. Fine. And apart from this, if you see, we should in our get call also, we should get all the values. So inside this, I will copy the same value and it will be like this. Why I'm doing this? Because if you see our post call, we were checking the response. But in case of get call also, when we are passing that ID, when you're passing this user ID, it is actually returning you the whole data of that user. Fine. So this is our chaining, how we perform chaining in Cypress. So what does it mean? It means when you're making a post call, we are creating a resource, and after that you are verifying that resource got created or not by using this get. Now let's run the test case and let's see if it is working fine or not. So let's execute the test. So now you see all the test cases are getting passed, and in the final test case, we are also making a get call. So you see, this is my ID, and in the ID also, after making a get call also, we are performing assertion for the status code, and then we are verifying all the fields. Okay, so this is the end-to-end flow for any project, for any API scenario. In your post call, whenever you're trying to make a post call, make sure apart from making a post call, apart from creating a resource, you also do this extra check for making a get call, because it is actually verifying for you if your data got created or not. Okay, so this is all our positive scenarios. Next thing is we will check the negative case. Negative case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass a wrong header over here. So this is my negative case, and I will name it as wrong headers. Wrong header, how is your API behaving? Let's see it manually first, and then we will automate it. So again, this is my post call. So this is my post call, fine. And in this case, if I'm not passing my bearer token, or if I'm passing it like this, I'm just removing the value. Now this is a wrong header. If I hit the API, we are getting the value which is invalid token. So this is an expected behavior. So when you perform negative test case, you should know the expected behavior as well, how your system is going to behave in that condition. Fine. So now let's go to our editor and let's see. So in the negative case, I will just change my bearer token. For example, this is a wrong header. So I will just remove this token value over here. Fine. And now we can't expect it to be 201, right? Because we saw in our postman, it is returning us 401, which is unauthorized. In case of authorization, we were passing an authorization token. When we do not have authorization token, it will throw 401, which is basically unauthorized. You're not authorized to access this resource. Fine. And in this case, we will remove the other assertions because we don't want it. And we will remove the assertion for get call as well. Okay, so what I'm doing, just trying to understand over here. I'm making the post call over here. And then in the post call, I'm going to pass some invalid header. So this is my invalid header. And then I'm expecting API to throw error of 401 status code so that it implies, yeah, your invalid token is there. Fine. So this is our assertion. Now let's run the test case and let's see for this one. So run this test case. And now you see this is getting failed. Okay, this is my 401. Although I passed assertion as 401, but this is getting. So in case of failure test case, what you have to do? You have to pass this fail on status code as false. So what does it mean? In Cypress, by default, if your status code is not 2x or 3x, which are basically your successful status codes, if it is other than that, you will get an error. Even though you're expecting your API to fail, even though your assertion is correct, still it is going to fail. For that, we can override this setting in Cypress. What you have to do? You have to pass this fail on status code as false inside your cy.request. So let's go over here and I will just pass it like this, fail on status code. And now we will rerun the test. In this case, if I'm going to make a call, again, it is going to pass. Instead of failing, you see, this is getting passed. Because we have passed fail on status code as false, that means Cypress will not fail this time. It will keep on changing until your assertion fails. So where assertion is also passing in this scenario. Fine. So we saw this negative case for wrong header. Next one is negative case. We will see if we are not passing email because email is a mandatory field, right? So we'll create a new it block for this one. So my second negative test case is wrong data because we are not passing our email in this case. So I will just remove this one. Okay. And in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass the same email address, but over here, we are going to pass the correct authorization token. I'll pass my authorization token over here. And then what we are expecting, because this is not 401, our authorization code is passed. In this case, we are expecting a different message, which is 420. And so in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass it as null. So I will just pass it like this. Okay. So now I'm passing the email as null. I'm just setting it as null and I'm going to hit the API. So this is for an example where I'm not passing my email address and I'm trying to submit the form. For example, on your front end, what happens if you have a form and if you have some field list, name, email ID, address, and gender, and if you're not passing email ID, which is a mandatory value, so your form should throw an error, right? So we are trying to automate the same case through API. We are expecting this to fail. Fine. But over here, we are passing email as null. So what I will do, I will just pass my correct authorization token. Let me just copy from here because this is again our different scenario. So this is my authorization token, correct authorization token. After authorization, what I'm expecting it to be 422. What is 422? It means your fields are not correct. We are expecting some more field, which is unprocessable entity. Fine. So now let's run the test case. In this case, what's happening? Let's see it. So let's run the test case. So now you see we have two negative cases. First one is wrong header and then wrong data, and wrong data is also getting passed. And it is checking the status code, which is 422, which is correct. Fine. So this is our second negative scenario. What is our third negative scenario? So the final negative case would be where we are passing the duplicate email address. So in this case, I will just copy it. And over here, I will pass like this. Over here, I will pass my email address. I will code it. I will pass like this, test01 and disposable.com, going to fail, right? Hard coding the email address over here. So this might duplicate data. So now let's run the test case and let's see. Post users. And now we have 5 scenarios. In the 5th scenario, we are checking for the duplicate data and we are expecting it to be 422. For example, you are filling a form and same email address has already been used by someone else. So that page should throw an error. It should throw an error. This is already used, right? This is the existing email address. So in that case, we should get an error on the page. So we are trying to automate the same scenario over here where we are passing the duplicate email address and then we are expecting it to be 422. Why? How we are passing the duplicate data? Because I have hard coded it. That means every time it will, hit the API with the same email address. This is already used email address. Okay. So guys, yeah, this is all for the post call automation in Cypress. So we covered multiple scenarios. We saw how we can do chaining also. We passed JSON body inside our cy.request. We created a different object also where we are passing the reference inside the body. Then we saw how we can pass it using fixtures. So we created a new JSON file in which we have stored the JSON data and we are using cy.fix and we are making a call based on that. Okay. Then we saw how we can import some other file which is not inside your cy.fixture, which is not inside your fixture package. If it is in separate package, how we can import that file as well, because there will be scenarios where you don't want to store inside your fixture. If you have this scenario, then you should know how to handle that case as well. Fine. And in case of negative data, we also saw how we can verify some negative cases, how we can verify some 400 request, 422 request, or 401. We saw all the scenarios. And the most important thing, I also explained about the chaining concept over here. When you are creating a resource and then you are verifying using the get call that resource got created or not. Okay. So yeah, this is all for today's video. I hope you're liking the content. And if you have any queries, just feel free to message in the comment and I will try to reply. And please like, share and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.